Kanye West, now widely known as Ye, built a career on disruption. Not polite disruption, not safe disruption, but the kind that changes what music, fashion, and celebrity culture believe is possible. He rises in this story as a modern hero, creative, fearless, and willing to break patterns that keep everyone else in line. But the same impulse that sparks revolutions can also burn bridges. And this episode isn't a simple cancellation story. It's about a dangerous mix: massive fame, enormous influence, mental health as a topic he has discussed publicly, and a media environment that turns every moment, good or bad, into fuel. Because fame doesn't just magnify talent. It magnifies mood, ego, vulnerability, and conflict. When the world rewards extremes, staying moderate can feel like disappearing. And when you become a symbol of genius, criticism doesn't feel like feedback anymore. It can feel like an attack on your existence. The rise is undeniable. Groundbreaking albums, cultural domination, business ambition that reached beyond music, and a global status that made him bigger than any single industry. He didn't just release projects, he created events. He didn't just sell products, he sold identity. Then the pattern begins, the one that turns into narrative addiction for the public. Controversy, reaction, escalation, consequences. The question that pulls us forward isn't, why does he do it? It's, what happens when the spotlight stops being a platform and becomes a permanent stage, and the person starts performing their own life, even on the worst days? Before the brand, before the chaos, there was the craft. He enters the mainstream as a producer with an ear for emotion and precision, then breaks through as a rapper who doesn't fit the dominant mold of the time. More vulnerable, more ironic, more confessional, more willing to say the quiet parts out loud. The early work doesn't just succeed, it shifts the center of gravity of hip-hop. Success stacks quickly. Each era raises the stakes. Bigger expectations, bigger statements, bigger risks. The genius label follows him everywhere, and labels are never neutral. A genius isn't allowed to be ordinary. A genius is expected to surprise, to dominate, to be right before the world understands why. Then the influence expands beyond music, fashion, design, public persona, the idea that he isn't just an artist but a force of culture. The audience grows from fans into spectators. Every appearance becomes content. Every quote becomes a headline. Every conflict becomes a storyline. And here's where the pressure changes shape. Instead of simply making great work, the job becomes maintaining momentum, staying talked about, staying unavoidable, staying larger than the market itself. In that environment, attention becomes a currency as real as money. At first, controversy looks like a side effect of boldness. But over time, the world's appetite shifts. Innovation is admired, but conflict is consumed. And once the machine realizes chaos travels faster than craft, the spotlight starts rewarding the loudest moments more than the best ones. This is where the psychology of fame tightens its grip. When identity fuses with public reaction, every critique can feel personal, every disagreement can feel like betrayal, and every silence can feel like defeat. The internet doesn't just report events, it turns them into arenas, with millions of people picking sides in real time. He has spoken publicly in the past about mental health, and public discussion around his behavior has often circled that topic. The problem is that the media ecosystem rarely treats mental health with patience. It treats it with urgency, spectacle, and monetization. A vulnerable moment becomes a clip. A complicated moment becomes a meme. A painful moment becomes debate content. And when cameras are always on, a person can begin to perform themselves, especially if attention has become proof of relevance. The line between authenticity and escalation gets blurry. What starts as honesty can turn into provocation. What starts as conviction can turn into impulse. And the audience can't always tell the difference, because the platforms reward the same thing either way: engagement. This is also where power distorts feedback. Fame can surround you with agreement, with yes people, with incentives to go further, because the spectacle benefits everyone watching and many people close by. The more attention you generate, the more the machine trains itself to keep generating attention, no matter the cost. So the cycle becomes familiar: a statement, backlash, doubling down, headlines, a new crisis, then a new reset. until consequences stop being theoretical and start landing in the places fame usually protects: business, partnerships, access, and reputation. Once controversy becomes predictable, it becomes measurable. Brands don't think in feelings, they think in risk. And public backlash turns into business math, reputational damage, consumer pressure, internal corporate calculations. The moment controversy threatens the bottom line, loyalty changes fast. This is the hidden gear in the machine. Attention can feel like power, but it can also become a trap. If the fastest way to stay relevant is to stay extreme, the incentive is always to push one more boundary. And when millions are watching, restraint can feel like losing the room. As public conflicts escalate, partnerships begin to strain. The brand built around creative genius collides with a different reality. Companies can celebrate disruption until disruption threatens them. And once the relationship flips, the same fame that once made doors open can make exits louder. At the same time, the public role gets heavier. Influence isn't just art anymore, it's impact. Words don't live only in interviews. They travel through markets, communities, politics, and culture. The debate stops being, "Do you like the music?" and becomes, "What responsibility comes with a microphone this big?" And that question is uncomfortable because there's no clean answer. People can be brilliant and harmful in the same week. They can be visionary and destructive in the same sentence. The audience keeps watching partly because it wants to locate the boundary. Where does the character end and the person begin? But the machine doesn't care about that boundary. The machine cares that people keep watching. And eventually, the bill arrives, not only in headlines, but in real losses that even celebrity can't reframe as art. When the consequences hit, they land across multiple worlds at once: business relationships, public perception, industry access, and personal relationships strained under constant scrutiny. The story becomes less about creation and more about fallout. What gets lost when controversy stops being an incident and becomes an identity? This is why the public fall feels so complex. There's genius in the catalog, real cultural impact, and real innovation. But there's also pain, conflict, and damage that can't be edited out of the record. The audience is forced to hold contradictions it usually avoids, admiring the work while questioning the person, feeling empathy while also feeling anger, recognizing vulnerability while still demanding accountability. And it's here that the attention economy shows its darkest trick. It can turn a person's worst days into a product. Commentary channels profit. Outrage cycles profit. Even condemnation can become a kind of entertainment, because the spectacle is always monetizable. Meanwhile, the person at the center can become trapped in the role the world now expects. If the public only listens when you explode, exploding becomes the language. If the public only rewards extremes, extremes start to feel like survival. And if every attempt to step back is treated as weakness or defeat, stepping back becomes even harder. The tragedy is that this spiral doesn't require a villain in a cape. It only requires a system that rewards chaos, and a human being powerful enough to keep feeding it. Which raises the final question: what happens when fame becomes fuel, and the fire starts needing more and more to stay alive? The reflection at the end is simple. Fame doesn't create every problem, but it amplifies everything: talent and flaws, courage and ego, honesty and impulse. When the world rewards the extreme, a public hero can lose themselves trying to be larger than human, because being human starts to look like failure. The moral isn't never be bold. It's boldness without brakes becomes self-destruction, especially when millions of people turn it into content. And when identity becomes performance, the person can get trapped inside the character the audience reacts to most. Now I want your take in the comments. Where do you draw the line between personal responsibility and a system that monetizes instability and outrage? Do platforms and brands share responsibility for what they amplify, or is it always only on the individual? If you want more documentary-style stories about the hidden mechanics of fame, how icons are built, how they collapse, and who benefits from the spectacle, subscribe and turn on notifications. Next episode: another public legend whose biggest gift became the pressure that nearly erased them.